Let's get more on this now with Vicky Pryce in London. She's Chief Economic Adviser at the Centre for Economics and Business Research. Good to have you back on the programme with us, Vicky. Now, despite easing inflation and stronger private sector activity, confidence is still low amongst consumers. What factors are contributing to the dampening sentiment among households?
Thank you. I think you touched on some of those. I think there is concern about the unemployment increase that we've seen and the fact that lots of businesses are very careful about hiring. So you've seen vacancies coming down. Prices, of course, are under some sort of control because we've seen inflation slowly dropping again, and it could drop further because of various government measures that are being put in place, such as taking away some of the costs from household energy bills, freezing prescription charges, and also in terms of other things that the government is trying to do is taking away some of the green levies that the consumers were paying before, and looking as well at what costs people have to pay for moving around the country. So train fares are being frozen in England. So if you put all these together, then inflation should be coming down, and cost of living issues have become now the main priority in terms of tackling them by the government. Now, obviously, you did also cover the results of the by-election. So we've all been up all night sort of waiting for the results and seeing what it all in fact means. That means really that the government has to try considerably harder to appease some of the concerns that people have about the cost of living, about where the economy may be going in the future. And I think that's going to be the main focus probably, when people are contemplating what the implications of it all are for economic policy.
And as you say, Keir Starmer's Labour aren't doing so well in popularity at the moment. So what sort of short-term economic impacts is that having to consumer confidence?
Well, the interesting thing is that we're about to get some information about the latest forecast for the economy, because on the next week we're getting a revision of what the Office of Budget Responsibility, which is the main body which is looking at the fiscal implications of quite a lot of what the government is doing, is going to be reporting. So the Chancellor is talking about that next Tuesday. And that will give also perhaps an indication of what the government thinks the economy may need in order to push it forward. If the forecasts are lower, then of course that also means that the prospects for employment are also going to be affected. Everyone is looking at that very carefully. Business confidence has sort of flatlined a little bit. It's improving under some surveys, but not necessarily under all. A bit of stability is what everyone is looking for, really, in order to encourage more investment and more growth. But we saw actually business investment drop in the last quarter. So loads and loads of issues, particularly, of course, when you look at the international scene in terms of tariffs, exports, what's happening with Europe. All these things are very important issues for the UK, and how this government, the Labour government, is going to be able to tackle those in a way that the consumer then can understand that, yes, there are some prospects ahead, and yes, perhaps they should look into their own savings. There's a huge amount of savings which the consumer still has in banks, which they haven't actually used. The savings ratio is very high. So the hope is that, particularly when interest rates start coming down even faster, perhaps, than people have been anticipating with this fall in inflation that will come, consumers are going to then move the savings out of the banks and start spending it. That's, I think, where much of the hope rests at present. So we'll see if that actually happens or not.
And what policy measures could realistically help rebuild household confidence in the near term?
Well, the main one, of course, is if interest rates do come down. There is an expectation now that when the Monetary Policy Committee, the Bank of England committee that decides on interest rates, meets on March the 19th, they're going to be cutting rates again. They didn't in the last meeting, but maybe they will now. That, of course, will affect mortgages and will affect the costs of borrowing for everybody, including businesses, of course. And I think that's where the main area is. The second one really is if business confidence starts improving. As I said, there is a little bit of an indication that that may be happening, but concerns about more tax increases, whatever may be happening when the budget comes again later in the year, the needs for defense spending, quite a lot of pressures on the budget for welfare spending. So all these things could, in fact, lead to perhaps the government needing to borrow more, and I think that's worrying everyone as well.
Right, we'll leave it there for now. Vicky Pryce in London, thank you very much as always.